Whales are majestic, but very difficult to study creatures.
Taking off. 3, 2, 1.
But drones are starting to make whale research easier, if a bit messier. This is SnotBot. Yes, snot, as in whale snot.
So what's so cool about whale snot is they're blowing out not only the actual sort of whale tissue at a very small level, but we're getting whale cells that will have DNA, we're getting the microbiome, and we're also getting hormones. You know, the hormones that can tell us, is the animal pregnant? Is it lactating? Is it sexually active? Is it stressed?
That's Iain Kerr, director of Ocean Alliance, which developed the SnotBot. I spoke with him about how drones are transforming whale research.
Before the drone came along, how did you do a biopsy on an animal the size of a school bus?
So in our case, we'd have quite a large boat, which was expensive, and we actually had a little boom that went out, and I would sit on the end of this boom with a crossbow, okay? And we'd try to get close enough to the whale to then biopsy it, where we shoot this crossbow, and the piece of tissue we get would be about the end of your pinky finger, or maybe the size of an eraser on a pencil. And that little piece of tissue would have all of this biological data. But what's interesting here is that biological data was more often than not legacy data. You know, this is what had happened. So we're almost interested in what's going on right now. So when you get an exhalation, that's really speaking to the condition of the animal right then and there, which is pretty exciting. Certainly the exhaled breath condensate or whale snot, we're not at that point right now where we're getting all of the data that we're getting from the biopsy sample, but the very fact that it's non-invasive is important, and also it's more cost effective. You know, we can run a drone from a small boat. And when I was sitting on the bow of a boat with my biopsy crossbow, I almost felt like I was playing whack-a-mole, because a whale would appear over there and I'd race over there, and then, it would dive, but the whale would appear over there, and then I'd race over there, and then it would dive. And, you know, I almost felt like I was sitting on the bow of the boat ripping up $100 bills, because it was costing a lot of money and I wasn't collecting the data. And I'm like, God, if only I could just like fly over there and grab that data. And in fact, it was one of these very frustrating days. We were down in the Gulf of Mexico working with sperm whales after the Deepwater Horizon disaster, and the whale had dived and it was the end of the day. And I'm like, I hadn't got any samples, and this cloud of snot engulfed me, and it was wonderfully horrible. You know, it was sticky and smelly and all of those things that technically a biologist is meant to like. I'm not sure how much I was liking it at the time, but that's when I realized, wow, maybe I smell an idea here. I smell a solution.
I gotta ask for you to elaborate there. What does it smell like in a cloud of whale snot?
Well, you know, guess what? It's almost what you'd think, and it's somewhat dependent on what the animals are eating. Do you know what I mean? Like blue whales that are eating krill are not as bad as humpback whales that are eating sand eels. You know, there's a volume issue here. You know, I mean, a blue whale's lungs are about the size of a VW. So imagine they're exhaling this. I mean, you are immersed in this cloud of, of the worst bad breath you've ever smelled.
The things you do for science, I guess, huh?
That's right. And the things we're excited about. I mean, who would have thought?
Can you walk us through the development of the SnotBot, maybe some design challenges that you came across in the beginning and how you surmounted those?
When I started with this, it was a little bit counterintuitive, because if you think about it, the whale is blowing up and the drone is blowing down. So the early prototypes, we actually had poles sticking down. You know, the drone was here and the pole was down. It's like 2 feet long. And at the bottom of the pole, I had sponges and wedding veil and meshes. And what I realized quite quickly, some of these things that were great at absorbing the blow, you then had to get them out again. And suddenly now, how do I know that that wedding veil isn't leaching plastic sort of toxicant, you know what I mean, that would actually affect my data. But we noticed when we were flying into the blow, we were getting snot on the top of the drone. And I think what was going on is that the drone's sucking all this air in. So if we sort of came up behind the whale, the snot was already on that trajectory, but it was sucking it back onto our drone. So incredibly counterintuitive. We just started putting Petri dishes on the top of the drone.
You collect the snot, you get back on land. What do you then do to analyze that sample, and what exactly are you looking for?
And the drone comes in and we just close the Petri dish. We take it back to our hotel that night, and there's a wonderful sound of one of the team with a mask on. They literally have like a mini car squeegee, and they go like, eek, 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 and they suck up the snot into a little cryo valve that we then send to different laboratories.
You're also able to identify the whales by the shape of their flukes. Can you talk about how that technology works?
When you're looking at these animals, it's long been an issue of how can we identify them. And what's cool is a lot of whales lift their tails up, and basically the patterns on the back of their flukes are very unique, and they tend to stay with the animal from birth. Now, the flukes can actually get bite scars and scratches on them, but generally lots of whale flukes have been a very useful way to track an animal throughout its life, which is very exciting. I do think with drones, though, we'll be using more looking down, maybe patterns on their back, maybe their sort of pectoral fins, and maybe even their blowholes. So I think that's going to change. But the fact that when we fly our drones out to collect snot, we're recording from the time we leave the boat till the time we get back.
Is there any artificial intelligence involved there in identifying the fluke, or are you doing that all still by sight?
We're doing it by sight. We actually worked on a project with Intel. They came on board and used some pretty high computing powers to help us. And we were flying out over a whale, and they actually took the live feed and interrogated this database. And while I was still flying, so within a 20-minute window, they said, Iain, you last saw that whale 10 years ago, 20 miles from here. So imagine if we knew that animal had been sick, or that animal had been hit by a ship, or that animal had been caught in a net, or the animal had a calf. Knowing what animal we were working with, or knowing the life history of the whale while we're with that animal, would certainly make the work more affordable. We'd sort of get a larger data set. People like me have lived in a world of sort of data deficit. When you're studying a rhino, it doesn't dive beneath the Serengeti after throwing a bucket of water on you and appear 5 miles away. You can sort of stay with that rhino. Whales are really difficult animals to study. They disappear under the water, and maybe you spend more of their time underwater doing the things that really make up their lives. And that's why it's so exciting that we can look at these hormonal clues when the animals exhale as to what's been going on over the last hour.
And are there any indications that the animals are at all bothered by SnotBot? Obviously, it's not as invasive as the previous method, but do they panic at all when you fly over them?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And actually, you need to put me to work. We have a publication that I'm hoping will be out within the next month. And basically, in 370 flights, we had 14 reactions. To get the permit for the work, actually, there was great concern about sort of acoustic disturbance. But what's actually interesting, and we wrote a paper on this, and a couple of other people have written a paper on it, the high frequency sound doesn't get through the water. So a low frequency sound like a helicopter or an airplane, like whoop, 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 does get through the water. But the high frequency sound that might be incredibly irritating to us, that sort of wham, doesn't seem to get through the water. Generally speaking, I think really good question, but data to date suggests it's very minimally invasive.
So what comes next here with your projects with SnotBot?
I'm still trying to push what other technologies can we use. We used a thermal camera to see if we could measure the body temperature of a whale by looking down the blowhole. So we're really excited to see if we can measure body temperature. And also then, if the body temperature is elevated, we'd say, okay, what else can we do with the drone? Or should we dig deeper on this hormone work? I'm also very interested in potentially fleets of drones. Can we take almost a three-dimensional picture of a whale with multiple drones? Can we do sort of morphometrics, look at body condition to help estimate the health of a whale? And, ultimately, there might even be intervention programs where a whale has had a scar, it's been cut, it's been infected. Maybe a drone will come along and shoot antibiotics into the whale to help it deal with its infection. Using other drones, we have one drone we affectionately call EarBot, where we drop the drone in the water with a hydrophone and record the vocalizations. And what will be exciting is if we can land multiple drones in the water, we might actually be able to say, wait a minute, this animal's talking to that animal and this animal's replying, better understanding how they communicate with each other, could provide some just amazing insights into their lives.
Thank you for being here with us, and good luck out there.
Thank you very much.